Single mother finds abandoned ship on deserted island, and what was inside. Sarah Johnson rowed hard against the current while her 5 children huddled together in the small wooden boat. Life as a single fisherwoman wasn't easy, especially when hunger knocked at the door and the fish seemed to have disappeared from the waters near the coast of Newport Beach, California. It was during this desperate search for a fishing spot that she spotted something that made her heart race. A majestic white ship was stranded on the small island that all the local fishermen had avoided for decades. The boat seemed too intact to be a simple abandonment, and Sarah felt a strange curiosity taking over her. "Mum, why are we going there?" asked Jason, her 16-year-old eldest son, pointing toward the palm-covered island. "I need to check something," Sarah replied, unable to explain what was driving her toward that place. The other children, 14-year-old Emily, 11-year-old twins Ethan and Tyler, and little 8-year-old Lily, remained silent. They knew that tone of their mother's well when she had a strong intuition about something. Sarah's boat rocked gently as she pulled it onto the bright sandy beach. The ship was just a few meters away, its white paint still gleaming under the afternoon sun. There were no signs of rust or deterioration that would justify decades of abandonment. "Stay here while I take a look," Sarah instructed, but Jason was already getting off the boat. "I'm not letting you go alone, Mom." Sarah smiled. Jason had always been protective ever since their father left when Lily was still a baby. He had become the man of the house too early, carrying responsibilities that shouldn't belong to a child. They walked to the ship, and Sarah was surprised to find a rope ladder still in good condition hanging from the side, as if someone had left everything prepared for others to climb up. "This is really strange, Mom," Jason murmured, examining the rope with suspicion, but Sarah was already climbing. Something inside her screamed that this discovery would change their lives forever, though she didn't know how or why. The ship's deck was clean, almost as if it were regularly maintained. There were no accumulated leaves or signs of birds nesting there. Sarah walked slowly, observing every detail, until she reached a door leading to the interior of the vessel. "Mum, maybe we shouldn't," Jason began, but she had already pushed the door open. What they found inside took their breath away. Well-preserved corridors led to small but organized rooms. On each door was a number, and inside each room, wooden bunk beds with mattresses still in good condition. Sarah entered the first room and found something that made her hands tremble. On a small table there were photographs of smiling children and letters that were never sent, all addressed to the same place, St. Catherine's Orphanage in Los Angeles. "Jason, come see this," she called, carefully picking up one of the letters. The young man approached and his eyes widened at the sight of the photos. Children of various ages, all wearing simple brown uniforms, identical to the ones he himself had worn when Sarah adopted him years ago. "Mom, these clothes," he began, his voice faltering. "They're just like the ones you wore when you arrived at the shelter," Sarah completed, feeling a chill run down her spine. Jason had arrived at the orphanage when he was just 6 years old, with no information about his origins. Sarah, who worked as a volunteer there, had fallen in love with the quiet, determined boy who took care of the younger children. When she decided to adopt him, she never imagined that one day she would discover clues about his past in this way. They continued exploring the rooms, finding more letters, children's drawings, and small personal belongings. In one of the back rooms, Sarah discovered a locked wooden box under one of the beds. "I need to open this," she said, searching for something to force the lock. Jason found an old tool on the deck and managed to open the box. Inside there were carefully organized documents, diaries written by children, and a hand-drawn map. Sarah picked up one of the diaries and began reading aloud. "Today we learned we're going to our new families. I'm scared but also hopeful. Captain William said good people are waiting for us in faraway places." "Captain William," repeated Jason. "That name appears in several letters." Sarah continued flipping through the documents and found something that made her world collapse. A list with children's names and ages, dated 15 years ago. The name Jason Parker, 6 years old, was written in neat handwriting in the middle of the page. "You were on this ship," she whispered, looking at her son with tears in her eyes. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Jason took the list with trembling hands and read his own name several times, as if he couldn't believe it. That piece of paper represented the missing piece in the puzzle of his origin, but it also raised disturbing questions. If I was here, where are the other children? Why was the ship abandoned? He asked, his voice filled with emotion. Sarah hugged her son, feeling the weight of the discovery. All these years, she had raised Jason as her own son, not knowing he had such a complex and mysterious history. "We'll keep looking for answers," she said, determined. "But first I need to talk to your siblings." They returned to the beach, where the other children waited anxiously. Sarah gathered everyone in a circle and carefully told them about the discovery. Emily, always the most observant, was the first to speak. "Does that mean Jason isn't really our brother?" "Jason has always been and will always be our brother," Sarah replied firmly. "What we found today doesn't change the love we have for each other, but it might help us understand our family better." The twins, Ethan and Tyler, always united in everything, exchanged worried looks. Little Lily, still trying to process the information, asked, "Mommy, are there more lost people on that boat?" Lily's innocent question struck Sarah like lightning. If Jason was on that list, other children were too. And if the ship was abandoned, what happened to them? "We'll find out together," Sarah promised. "Tomorrow we'll come back here and investigate further." That night, Sarah could barely sleep. She kept thinking about all the possibilities, all the unanswered questions. Jason also stayed up all night, flipping through the documents they had brought from the ship. The next morning, even before the sun had fully risen, the family was back on the island. This time, everyone boarded the ship together. Sarah had brought flashlights and a stronger rope, determined to explore every corner of the vessel. "Mom, there are more rooms down there," said Emily, pointing to a staircase they hadn't noticed the day before. They carefully descended and found a larger area, which seemed to be the ship's main room. There were small tables and chairs, as if it were a dining hall, and on the walls hung children's drawings that told silent stories. One of the drawings caught Sarah's attention. It was a portrait of a smiling woman with the words Grandma Dorothy written underneath. The drawing was signed by Jay. "Jason, come see this," she called, pointing to the drawing. The young man approached and his eyes filled with tears. He vaguely remembered drawing that, but the memory was hazy, like a distant dream. "I remember her," he whispered. "Grandma Dorothy used to give me candy hidden from the other adults." Sarah felt her heart tighten. Jason had lost not only his parents, but also a grandmother who clearly loved him. How had such a young child endured so much suffering? Ethan, one of the twins, found another important document hidden behind one of the drawings. It was a detailed map of the island, drawn by a child with an X marking a specific spot. "Look, there's something buried here," he said, showing the map to the others. The map indicated a spot behind the palm trees, near a rock formation they had seen upon arrival. Sarah decided they should investigate. The family followed the clues on the child's map and found the marked location. The ground there seemed different, softer, as if it had been dug up recently. Jason grabbed a sturdy branch and started digging. After a few minutes, he hit something solid. It was a metal box carefully wrapped in plastic to protect it from moisture. "Be careful opening it," Sarah warned, sensing that what was inside would be important. The box contained treasures from a childhood cut short: handmade wooden toys, small cloth dolls, hand-carved toy cars, and most importantly, a large number of birth certificates and official documents. Sarah picked up the birth certificates carefully. They were original documents for dozens of children, all with different names, birth dates, and places of origin. Many were from small towns in the interior of California and other states in the Deep South. "These children were taken from their families," concluded Emily, always quick to grasp complex situations. "It seems so," agreed Sarah, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "And someone planned this journey long ago." Among the documents, they also found letters from couples in other countries, all interested in adopting Brazilian children. The letters were in English and Spanish, talking about families who had been waiting for years to receive their new children. Jason picked up one of the letters translated by someone and read it aloud. "We are very eager to welcome our Brazilian son. We have prepared a special room and bought many toys. Please send us any information about when he will arrive." "They were selling children," said Sarah, her voice filled with indignation. The discovery completely changed their perspective on the ship. It wasn't just an abandoned boat, but evidence of a criminal scheme that tore families apart and profited from the suffering of innocent children. "Mum, we need to tell someone about this," said Jason, holding his original birth certificate. "Yes, but first we need to better understand what happened. Why was the ship abandoned? Where are the other children?" Sarah was determined to uncover the whole truth, not just for Jason, but for all the children who had gone through that situation. They returned to the ship and continued their investigation in the upper cabins. In a cabin that appeared to be the captain's, they found more documents, including a personal diary that began to clarify the mysteries. The diary was written in a masculine hand and started 3 months before the last voyage. March 15th. "The preparations for the voyage are almost complete. The foreign families have already made payments and the children are eager. Dorothy insists we should stop this, but she doesn't understand how business works." Sarah kept reading, uncovering disturbing details about how the scheme operated. Captain William worked with a network of people who identified orphaned or abandoned children and prepared them for international adoption. "Dorothy must be the nurse who took care of the children," concluded Jason. "Maybe she tried to stop what was happening." Further into the diary, the entries showed growing tension. April 2nd. "Dorothy threatened to report me if I didn't cancel this trip. She said she can no longer live with the guilt. She doesn't understand that these children will have a better life with wealthy families." April 10th. "Dorothy disappeared. She took some important documents of mine. I'm worried she went to the authorities." April 15th. Last entry. "We'll depart tomorrow regardless. The children are nervous, but there's no turning back now. Many families are waiting." The last entry was dated exactly 15 years ago, around the time Jason would have made the journey. But what had happened afterward? Why was the ship abandoned? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Maria searched for more clues in the captain's cabin and found something that left her breathless. Hidden behind a mirror was an old photograph of a smiling woman standing with several children. On the back was written, "Dorothy Parker, volunteer nurse, 1995. The surname immediately caught her attention. Parker was the surname they had given Jason at the orphanage when he arrived without documents. "Jason, look at this," she called, showing him the photo. The young man examined the photograph carefully and his face lit up with recognition. "It's her. It's Grandma Dorothy from my drawing," he exclaimed, overcome with emotion. "And she has the same last name as you," added Maria, starting to connect the dots. The discovery that Dorothy Parker might have some family connection to Jason added a new layer of complexity to the situation. Was she really his grandmother? And if so, why was she involved in that scheme? Emily, always curious, was exploring other compartments of the ship when she shouted, "Mom, come see what I found." She was in a smaller room, full of old communication equipment. On a table there was a still-functioning radio and papers with transmission notes. Maria examined the notes and found records of communications from the final voyage. April 16th, Captain to base, departing as planned, 23 children on board. April 17th, problem with the nurse. Dorothy refuses to cooperate. Situation under control. April 18th, severe storm, changing course to emergency island. April 19th, Dorothy freed the children during the storm. Critical situation, requesting instructions. The final notes revealed what had happened. Dorothy had sabotaged the journey, using a storm to save the children. But how did she manage to do it alone? "Mum, there's something else written here underneath," said Tyler, pointing to nearly illegible scribbles at the bottom of the page. Maria bent down to read better. April 20th, Dorothy convinced part of the crew. Children were taken ashore during the night. Operation cancelled. Abandoning ship. The revelation that Dorothy had organized a mutiny to save the children completely changed the image they had of her. She wasn't an accomplice to the scheme, but rather a heroine who risked everything to protect those children. "So she was the one who saved me," murmured Jason, tears streaming down his face. "But why did you end up in the orphanage? Where are the other children?" asked Ethan. These questions still needed answers. Maria decided it was time to seek help from the local community. Someone older might remember strange events that happened 15 years ago. The family returned to Newport Beach in the late afternoon. Maria went straight to the harbor, where the older fishermen gathered to mend nets and tell stories. If something significant had happened in the region 15 years ago, they would know. Old Man Henry, a 70-year-old fisherman who had known Sarah since she was a child, was mending a net when she approached. "Old Man Henry, can I ask you about something that happened a long time ago?" "Of course, my dear. What do you want to know? Do you remember anything strange that happened 15 years ago? Maybe children appearing in town or boats arriving unexpectedly?" Old Man Henry's face changed immediately. He stopped working on the net and looked around, as if wanting to make sure no one else was listening. "Why are you asking about this, Sarah?" "I found some things on Dry Point Island. Things that might be related to Jason." Old Man Henry sighed deeply before answering. 15 years ago, on a night of a very strong storm, several children appeared on the beach. They were wet, cold, some hurt. An older woman was with them, a nurse. What happened to them? The nurse asked us not to ask questions. She said the children were in danger and needed to be scattered to safe places. Some families here took in the younger ones temporarily. The older ones were taken to orphanages in different towns. And the nurse? We never saw her again. She left the same night, after making sure all the children were safe. Old Man Henry's story confirmed Sarah's suspicions. Dorothy had really saved the children, including Jason. But why had she disappeared? And more importantly, where was she now? "Old Man Henry, do any of those children still live here in the area?" "Some do. Jack the fisherman's family took in a girl, Rebecca. She grew up here and now works at the school. The Smith couple kept a boy, but he left when he grew up." Sarah felt a chill in her stomach. Rebecca was a teacher at the school where her children studied. If she had been on the same ship as Jason, maybe she could provide more information about what happened that night. "Thank you, Old Man Henry. This helps me a lot." "Sarah, be careful. That whole story was very strange. Some men came looking for the children weeks later, but the community said they didn't know anything." Old Man Henry's warning made Sarah even more determined to uncover the whole truth. If men had looked for the children afterward, it meant the scheme was bigger than she imagined. The next day, Sarah went to the school looking for Rebecca. She found her organizing materials in the teacher's lounge during the break. "Rebecca, I need to talk to you about something very important." "Of course, Sarah, what happened? Is it about one of your children?" "Actually, it's about Jason, and about you too." Rebecca stopped organizing the papers and looked directly at Sarah, as if sensing the conversation would be significant. "What are you talking about?" Sarah told her about the discovery of the ship and the documents found. As she spoke, she saw Rebecca's face grow increasingly pale. "Do you remember anything from that night?" Sarah asked gently. Rebecca sat down heavily in a chair and closed her eyes for a moment. "I've had nightmares for 15 years about a boat and a storm. I always thought they were just bad dreams, but they were real memories. I remember a brave woman who saved us. She told us to forget everything and start a new life, that it was the only way to stay safe." Dorothy Parker. "Yes, that was her name. Dorothy carried me in her arms when we got off the boat. I was very scared, but she sang a song softly to calm me down." Rebecca began to cry, releasing 15 years of repressed memories. Sarah hugged her, understanding the trauma that experience had caused a child. "Rebecca, do you remember anything else about the others on the boat?" "There was a slightly older boy who took care of all of us. He was very protective, especially with the younger children. He always shared his food when someone was hungry." "Jason." "Could be. I was very little, so I don't remember faces clearly. But I remember his kindness. The conversation with Rebecca confirmed that Jason had been a protective figure even in childhood, traits he maintained to this day with his adoptive siblings. "Rebecca, do you know if there are other people from the area who were on the boat?" "I'm not sure, but I've always felt a strange connection with some people in town, as if we'd met somewhere before. I never knew how to explain that feeling." Sarah was starting to suspect that more people in the community might have connections to that story. She decided it was time to investigate more deeply. That afternoon, she gathered all the children and told them about the day's discoveries. Jason was especially moved to learn that Rebecca had been on the same boat and that he had taken care of her. "Does that mean we have a sister nearby?" asked Lily, always focused on family. "Not a blood sister, but someone who went through the same difficult experience," explained Sarah. "Mom, we need to find Dorothy," said Jason determinedly. "She must have the answers to all our questions." "You're right, son. But how are we going to find someone who disappeared 15 years ago?" Emily, always practical, suggested, "We can start by looking for records at the county clerk's office and City Hall. If she was born here in the region, she must have documents." Emily's idea was good, but Sarah had a feeling that Dorothy Parker hadn't disappeared far away. There was something in the way Old Man Henry spoke about her that suggested familiarity, as if he knew her from before that night. "Let's go back to the harbor tomorrow," decided Sarah. "I want to talk to more old fishermen. Someone must know more about Dorothy." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us, who are just starting out. Now continuing. The next morning, Sarah and Jason returned to the harbor early. They found Mrs. Margaret, an 80-year-old lady who knew all the town's history, selling fish at the market. "Mrs. Margaret, did you know a nurse named Dorothy Parker?" The elderly woman's reaction was immediate. She stopped arranging the fish and stared intently at Sarah. "Why are you looking for Dorothy?" "We found some things that might be related to her. It's very important." Mrs. Margaret looked around and lowered her voice. "Dorothy was my granddaughter, daughter of my daughter who passed away very young." Sarah felt her heart race. They had finally found a direct connection to Dorothy. "Where is she now?" "I don't know. After that terrible night, she came to tell me she had done something very important, but that she had to leave forever. She said dangerous people might come looking for her." "She didn't say where she was going?" "No. She just gave me an envelope and asked me to keep it in case someone ever came looking for the children from that night." Jason stepped forward. "Do you still have that envelope?" "I do. 15 years keeping it, waiting for someone to show up." Mrs. Margaret took them to her simple home in the center of town. From inside an old chest, she pulled out a yellowed envelope with time, with the name, "For the Children of the St. Michael," written on the front. "St. Michael was the name of the ship," whispered Jason, recognizing the information from the documents they had found. Mrs. Margaret handed the envelope to Sarah with trembling hands. "Dorothy said that when the right day came, I would know who to give this to." Sarah carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a long letter, written in the same feminine handwriting they had seen in the ship's documents. "If you're reading this, it means one of the children I saved that night grew up and came looking for answers. My name is Dorothy Parker, and I was a nurse in the most terrible scheme I've ever known. For months, I helped Captain William Thompson prepare orphaned children for international adoption, believing I was giving them a chance at a better life. I only discovered the truth when I found documents showing the amounts he received for each child. They weren't legal adoptions. They were sales. Wealthy families from other countries paid fortunes for American children, and William profited from this misery. When I found out, I tried to convince William to stop, but he said it was already too late. The final trip was scheduled and couldn't be cancelled. That's when I decided to act. During the storm on the night of April 19th, I convinced 3 crew members to help me. They had also discovered the truth and were willing to do what was right. We managed to get all 23 children safely to dry land. Each one was placed with trustworthy families or institutions in different cities, so they couldn't be found by the criminals. If you are one of these children, know that you were loved and protected that night. If you are the parent of one of them, know that your son or daughter was saved from a terrible fate. I can't say where I am now, as it might still be dangerous, but I will always carry in my heart the memory of every child we saved. With love, Dorothy Parker. Jason cried as Sarah read the letter aloud. They finally had the answers they were looking for, but also a new understanding of the courage Dorothy had shown. "She risked her own life to save us," said Jason, moved. "And she succeeded," added Sarah. "You grew up safe and loved, just as she wanted, Mrs." Margaret also cried, proud of her granddaughter who had made such a brave decision. "There's one more thing," she said, returning to the trunk. "Dorothy left this too." It was a small box with photographs, pictures of all 23 children who were on the ship, taken during the trip. Jason immediately recognized himself in one of them, alongside other children he now vaguely remembered. "Mum, there are names written on the back of the photos," observed Jason. They began examining the photographs. Each one had a name and an age written on the back. Besides Jason and Rebecca, there were other names that sounded familiar. "Anthony Edward, 8 years old," read Sarah. "That name reminds me of someone." "It's the Anthony who works at Mr. Vincent's shop," said Jason. "I always thought he had an energy similar to mine." They continued examining the photos and discovered that at least 6 of the children had grown up in the Newport Beach area and neighboring towns, all in different families, but close enough for their paths to cross occasionally. Dorothy planned this, realized Sarah. She scattered the children, but not too far from each other, so that one day they could reunite. The discovery that several people in the community shared that origin changed Sarah's perspective on many relationships she had observed over the years. Unexplained connections, instant friendships, feelings of familiarity they never knew how to explain. "We need to talk to them," decided Jason. "Everyone deserves to know the truth." "But we have to be careful," warned Mrs. Margaret. "Dorothy said dangerous men looked for the children for months afterward. There might still be risk." Sarah pondered the elderly woman's warning. 15 years had passed, but there were no guarantees the danger had completely disappeared. "Let's start slowly," she decided. "Only speaking with the people we identified in the photos. If anything seems off, we stop." That afternoon, Sarah and Jason went to Mr. Vincent's workshop, looking for Anthony Edward. They found him under a car, focused on his work. "Anthony, can I talk to you for a moment?" He came out from under the car, wiping his oily hands on a rag. "Of course, Mrs. Sarah, what is it?" Sarah decided to be direct but careful. "Do you remember anything about your childhood before you came here to Newport Beach?" Anthony's face changed immediately. He looked around the workshop, as if wanting to make sure they were alone. "Why are you asking this?" "Because we found some things that might be related to you, to your origins." Anthony set the rag aside and leaned on the workbench. "I've had strange dreams for years. Dreams about a boat and other children. I always thought it was just in my head." "It wasn't," said Jason, stepping closer. "I was there too." The two young men looked at each other for a long moment, and Anthony began to remember. "You're the boy who gave me your dessert when I was hungry. On the boat. And you're the one who taught me how to tie knots with ropes during the trip." The reunion between Jason and Anthony was emotional. Two children who had protected each other during a traumatic experience, now recognizing each other as young adults. Sarah told Anthony about all the discoveries, showing him the photograph where he appeared smiling next to Jason. Anthony cried upon seeing his own image as a child, a memory that had been buried by years of trying to forget. "So that's why I always felt close to certain people here in the region," concluded Anthony. "We were all from that boat." "Exactly," confirmed Sarah, "and Dorothy gave us a second chance to be a family, even without knowing it." Anthony wanted to help find the other children from the photographs. He recognized 2 more names of people he knew from the area: Jessica, who worked at the health center, and Derek, who had a small shop in the city center. "Jessica has always been very careful with children," commented Anthony. "It makes sense now. She must remember what we went through. And Derek has always had nightmares. I heard him mention it a few times," added Jason. With each discovery, the network of connections became clearer. Dorothy had truly created an extended family without anyone consciously knowing. During the following days, Sarah, Jason, and Anthony carefully approached Jessica and Derek. Both reacted with surprise and emotion upon discovering the truth about their origins. Jessica, a 29-year-old nurse, cried when she saw her childhood photograph. "I always knew I had a special calling to care for children, but I never understood why. Now it makes sense." Derek, who had become a prosperous small merchant, remained silent for a long time before speaking. "I remember the storm, I remember the fear, and I remember a brave woman who told us everything would be all right." "Dorothy," they all whispered together. The group of 5 young adults who had been children on the St. Michael ship began to meet regularly. They shared fragmented memories that, together, formed a more complete picture of that experience. During one of these meetings at Sarah's house, Rebecca brought disturbing news. Yesterday, a man came to the school asking about children who might have arrived in the region 15 years ago. He said he was a journalist doing a story about adoptions. "Did you say anything to him?" asked Sarah, worried. "No. Something about his manner made me suspicious. I asked for the name of the newspaper, and he couldn't answer properly." The news left everyone alarmed. Mrs. Margaret had warned about men who had looked for the children years ago. Could it be that they were still interested in them? "We need to be more careful," said Jason. "Maybe we should stop here." "No," replied Anthony with determination. "Dorothy risked everything to save us. We can't be afraid now." Jessica agreed. "We're adults now. We can protect ourselves. And we have the right to know our full story." Derek, always practical, suggested, "Let's keep investigating, but more carefully. And if anyone suspicious shows up again, we warn each other immediately." The group decided to continue searching for the other children from the photographs, but taking extra precautions. Sarah suggested they find ways to communicate discreetly if anything strange happened. During the search for the other survivors from the ship, they discovered that 3 of the children had moved to other cities when they grew up. But there were still people in the area who might have connections to that story. It was Derek who recognized the next name on the list, Amanda Smith. She lives on Mr. Anthony's farm about 20 kilometers from here. "Do you know her?" asked Sarah. "I know her by sight. I always thought there was something different about her. She's very reserved, but when she talks about children, she gets emotional." The group decided to visit Amanda over the weekend. Mr. Anthony's farm was on a dirt road, surrounded by cocoa plantations and small streams. They found Amanda tending a garden in front of the simple house where she lived. She was a 27-year-old woman with long hair and eyes that seemed to hold many secrets. "Amanda," called Sarah, approaching slowly. "Yes. Can I help you with something?" "We'd like to talk to you about something very important. About your childhood." Amanda's face closed off immediately. "I don't like talking about the past." "Please," said Jason, showing the photograph. "You were with us that night." Amanda looked at the photo and her hands began to tremble. For a moment it seemed she would deny everything, but then her eyes filled with tears. "You were on the boat too?" "We were. And we've discovered the whole truth about what happened." Amanda invited them into the house. Sitting in the simple living room, she shared her most painful memories. "I remember everything. The captain who lied to us, saying we were going to loving families. The brave woman who saved us. The night of the storm. But mostly I remember the fear." "Dorothy saved us all," said Rebecca softly. "I know. And for 15 years I tried to forget, because remembering hurt too much. But lately the dreams have been coming back stronger." Amanda revealed something none of them expected. "A few weeks ago, a man showed up here asking about me, said he was looking for relatives of children who disappeared years ago." "The same one who appeared at the school," murmured Rebecca. "Probably. He had a strange accent, not from around here. And when I asked how he knew where to find me, he got nervous and left quickly." Amanda's information confirmed the group's worst fears. Someone was actively looking for the children from the St. Michael ship, and this person had enough resources to locate them after so long. "What do you think he wants?" asked Jessica, visibly worried. "Maybe he wants to silence witnesses," suggested Anthony. "If the scheme was big, other important people might be involved." "Or maybe there are still families who paid for children and never received them," said Derek. "They might be trying to get their money back or demand what they bought." The possibility raised by Derek was particularly disturbing. If wealthy families had paid fortunes for American children 15 years ago, they might still consider themselves owners of those children, even now that they were adults. "We need to find Dorothy," said Jason urgently. "She's the only one who knows all the details of the scheme. She can help us understand the danger." "But how?" asked Amanda. "She disappeared 15 years ago." Sarah had been thinking about this issue ever since they read Dorothy's letter. There was something about the way she wrote that suggested she hadn't gone very far. "I have a theory," she said. "Dorothy knew this region very well. She knew exactly where to place each child, so they would be safe but close to each other. This suggests she had deep local connections." "Do you think she's still nearby?" asked Jason hopefully. "I think it's worth investigating. Mrs. Margaret said Dorothy was her granddaughter. Maybe there are other relatives in the area who know where she is." The group decided to talk to Mrs. Margaret again, this time asking more specific questions about Dorothy's family. The next day, Sarah and Jason visited the elderly woman again. This time, she seemed more willing to share information. Dorothy had a younger brother, Robert. They were very close as children. "Where is Robert now?" "He lives in a small town called Malibu, about an hour from here. He works as a fisherman, just like his father." "Do you think Dorothy might have sought him out after she disappeared?" Mrs. Margaret thought for a moment before answering. "It's possible. They always promised they would protect each other, no matter what happened." Sarah felt they were getting close to finding Dorothy. If she had really sought out her brother, Robert could be the key to locating her. "Mrs. Margaret, do you have Robert's address?" "I don't have a specific address, but I know he lives near the Malibu harbor. It's a small town. It shouldn't be hard to find a fisherman named Robert Parker." That weekend, the whole group decided to go to Malibu. It was risky for them all to move together, but they felt they needed mutual support in case they discovered important information. Malibu was indeed a small town, with a busy harbor and narrow streets lined with colorful houses. At the harbor, it wasn't difficult to find someone who knew Robert Parker. "Robert, of course I know him. He lives on the street behind the market in a blue house with a porch. Good man, very reserved," said a local merchant. They found the blue house easily. Robert was on the porch mending a fishing net. He was a man of about 50 with calloused hands and a gentle gaze that strongly reminded them of Dorothy in the photographs. "Mr. Robert," called Sarah, approaching the porch. "Yes, that's me. How can I help you?" "We're from Newport Beach. We're looking for your sister, Dorothy." Robert's face changed completely. He dropped the net and stood up quickly. "Who are you? Why are you looking for my sister?" "We're people she saved 15 years ago," replied Jason, showing the photograph of the ship. Robert looked at the photo for a long moment. When he raised his eyes, they were moist. "You're the children from the boat?" "Yes, and we really need to talk to her." Robert looked around the street before answering. "Come inside. It's not safe to talk out here." Inside the simple but cozy house, Robert served coffee and sat facing the group. "Dorothy is alive and well, but I can't tell you where she is without speaking to her first." "Please," begged Jason. "Strange men are looking for us. We need her help to understand what's happening." "What kind of men?" Jessica told him about the man who appeared at the school, and Amanda about the visit she had received at the farm. Robert looked visibly worried. "This isn't good. Dorothy always said this day might come." "So she's still afraid of them?" "She has reasons to be. The scheme you uncovered was just the tip of the iceberg. There were very powerful people involved, people who don't forgive those who harm them." Robert's revelation about the extent of the criminal scheme left everyone apprehensive. If it really involved powerful people, the danger was greater than they had imagined. "Mr. Robert, can we at least leave a message for Dorothy?" asked Sarah. "Tell her we're grateful she saved us?" Robert smiled for the first time since their conversation began. "I think I can do that. In fact, I'm sure she'll be very happy to know you grew up well." "And there's one more thing," added Anthony. "We want to help other survivors from the ship. There are still people who don't know the truth about their origins." "That's dangerous," warned Robert. "The more you expose yourselves, the greater the risk." "But it's only fair," insisted Rebecca. Everyone has the right to know their story. Robert pondered the dilemma. On one hand, he understood their desire to help other survivors. On the other, he knew this could put them in real danger. "I'll speak to Dorothy about you," he promised. "Depending on what she says, maybe we can arrange a safe meeting." "When?" asked Jason eagerly. "Give me a week. Come back here next Saturday, same time. I'll bring Dorothy's answer." The group returned to Newport Beach with mixed feelings. They were closer to finding Dorothy, but also more aware of the danger they faced. During the following week, each of them remained especially alert to any suspicious movements in their routines. Sarah instructed all her children to be careful and to report immediately if any strangers appeared asking questions. It was Derek who noticed something worrying first. On Thursday, a car with out-of-state plates remained parked in front of his shop for several hours, with two men just watching the activity. They didn't buy anything, didn't ask for directions, just sat there observing, he told the group at an impromptu meeting at Sarah's house. "I think we should cancel the trip to Malibu," suggested Jessica nervously. "No," said Jason firmly. "If we cancel now, we might never get another chance to speak with Dorothy, and she might have important information about how to protect ourselves." Sarah agreed with her son. "We'll go, but we'll take extra precautions. We'll go in separate cars using different routes, and we won't all stay together in town." On Saturday, following the security plan, the group arrived in Malibu in stages. Sarah and Jason were the first to arrive at Robert's house, finding him even more tense than the previous week. "Dorothy wants to meet you," he said without preamble, "but the situation is complicated. Dangerous people are indeed looking for the children from the ship." "How does she know that?" "Because they approached her first. They offered a lot of money for information about your whereabouts." "And her?" "She obviously refused. But now they know she's alive and that she might have information. She had to leave where she was living." The news that Dorothy had been forced into hiding again because of them left everyone feeling guilty. "It was our fault," said Jason. "If we hadn't started investigating—" "No," interrupted Robert. "You did what was right. Dorothy always said that one day you deserve to know the truth. The problem is the criminals who won't give up. Where is she now?" "In a safe place. And she wants to meet you today, before the situation gets worse." Robert explained that Dorothy was hiding in a fisherman's cabin on a secluded beach, about 30 minutes from Malibu. The location was accessible only by a trail known to locals. She asked you to go one at a time, with 15-minute intervals, so you don't draw attention in case someone is watching. Jason was the first. Robert took him to the start of the trail and gave detailed instructions on how to reach the cabin. The path went through dense woods, then along rocks near the sea, until it reached a small protected cove. When Jason spotted the simple wooden cabin, his heart raced. After 15 years, he would finally reunite with the woman who had saved his life. Dorothy was sitting in a chair on the cabin porch, looking at the sea. Even 15 years older, Jason recognized her immediately. There was the same kindness in her eyes, the same careful posture of someone who always cared for others. "Jason," she said, rising with tears in her eyes. "My brave boy. How you've grown." They hugged for a long time, both crying. Jason felt as if a lost part of his soul had been recovered. "Dorothy, I remember you. I remember how you calmed me during the storm. And I remember how you looked after the other children, even though you were so small. I knew you would become a good man." They talked for a few minutes before the others arrived. One by one, Dorothy welcomed each survivor with the same affection, recalling specific details about every child she had saved. When everyone was gathered in the small cabin, Dorothy finally told the full story. Captain William Thompson wasn't just any criminal. He worked for an international organization that had made millions from child trafficking for over a decade. "How many children?" asked Amanda, her voice choked. "Hundreds, maybe thousands. Children from various poor countries were taken to wealthy families who paid fortunes for them." "And did these families know it was a crime?" "Some knew, others believed they were legal adoptions, but all paid much more than a normal adoption would cost, so they at least had suspicions." Dorothy explained that she had worked in the scheme for almost a year before discovering the truth. Initially, she believed she was helping orphan children find loving families. William was very convincing. He said the foreign families offered opportunities the children would never have in the United States. I wanted to believe I was doing good. What made you discover the truth? I found documents by chance, dollar amounts, contracts that referred to merchandise instead of children, correspondence that made it clear it was a business, not charity. And then you decided to stop it all. I tried to convince William first. I said we could report everything and help the authorities arrest the real culprits. He laughed at me. Dorothy told how she discovered that William had powerful connections, including politicians and businessmen, who protected the scheme in exchange for a share of the profits. When I saw he wasn't going to stop, I started planning how to save the children from the last trip. How did you manage to convince the sailors to help you? It wasn't difficult. Most of the crew were simple men who thought they were working in normal transport. When they learned the truth, they were as outraged as I was. And Captain William? What happened to him? He disappeared the same night you were saved. I never saw him again, but I know he continued working for the organization. The revelation that William Thompson was still active in the world of crime left everyone apprehensive. If he found out where they were, he would certainly try to silence them. Dorothy, the men who are looking for us, are they from the same organization? Yes. And they won't give up easily. You represent a threat because you are living witnesses to their crimes. What can we do? For now, keep a low profile. No more interviews. No public investigations. And if anyone suspicious appears, you let me know immediately. Rebecca asked about something that had been worrying her for days. And the other children we haven't found yet? Are they in danger too? They all are, but it's too dangerous to look for them now. The criminals might be using it as a trap. A trap. Pretending to search for the lost children to lure you out. The more you expose yourselves, the easier it will be for them to find everyone. The criminals' strategy was more sophisticated than they had imagined. They were using the group's own desire for reunion as a way to locate them. So, should we stop everything? Asked Anthony, frustrated. For now, yes, until I find a safe way to deal with this threat. Do you have a plan? Dorothy smiled for the first time since the conversation began. I always have a plan, but this time I'll need your help. She explained that for 15 years she had been collecting evidence about the criminal organization. Documents, recordings, proof that could destroy the scheme for good. Why didn't you report it before? Because I knew they would try to silence me before I could present the evidence. I had to wait for the right moment. And now is the right time? Yes. With you as living witnesses, the evidence becomes much stronger. Together we can ensure these criminals are imprisoned forever. Dorothy's plan was risky but well-structured. She had spent years documenting the organization's activities, always waiting for the opportunity to destroy it completely. Where is this evidence? Asked Jason. Hidden in various safe places, documents in notary offices, recordings at trusted friends' houses, copies in different countries. And what do we need to do? Help gather everything and deliver it to the right authorities. But it has to be simultaneous in multiple countries, so the criminals don't have time to escape or destroy evidence. The operation's complexity showed how extensive the criminal network was. Dorothy had carefully planned how to dismantle it, but needed help to execute the plan. This is dangerous, observed Sarah, worried about her children's safety. Very dangerous, agreed Dorothy, but it's the only way to ensure you'll be safe forever. As long as this organization exists, you'll be targets. And if something goes wrong? I have contingency plans, safe places where you can hide if necessary. The group spent the rest of the afternoon discussing the plan's details. Each person would have a specific role, and all actions would be coordinated to happen simultaneously. Jason would be responsible for delivering documents to the district attorney's office in Los Angeles. Anthony would take recordings to an investigative journalist in Chicago. Jessica and Rebecca would be in charge of protecting the families during the operation. Derek would coordinate communications between everyone. When will we do this? Asked Jessica. Next week. I've already waited 15 years. I can't wait any longer. The criminals are getting closer and our window of opportunity is closing. And after? After you'll be able to live your lives in peace, knowing you brought justice not just for yourselves, but for hundreds of other children who suffered at the hands of these criminals. The meeting with Dorothy had changed everything. What began as a search for personal answers had turned into a mission to destroy an international criminal organization. When they said goodbye, Dorothy hugged each of them. "You've grown up exactly as I dreamed. Courageous, united, determined to do what's right. I'm proud of all of you." "We're the ones who should thank you," said Jason. "You gave us a second chance at life, and now you're going to give a second chance to many other children by helping to end this evil." The group returned to Newport Beach with mixed feelings of fear and determination. The next few days would be crucial, and everyone knew their lives could change forever. In the week that followed, each person carried out their part of the plan with military precision. Jason traveled to Los Angeles and delivered a complete dossier to the prosecutor Dorothy had recommended. Anthony went to Chicago and met with the investigative journalist who had been trying to expose child trafficking schemes for years. The evidence presented was overwhelming. Bank documents showing million-dollar transfers, recordings of conversations between the criminals, lists of transported children and the families who received them, contracts that made the commercial aspect of the operations clear. Simultaneously, Dorothy activated contacts in other countries, handing over evidence to authorities in Europe and the United States, where many of the children had been taken. The operation was launched on a Thursday morning. In 3 different countries, arrest warrants were issued against dozens of people involved in the scheme. William Thompson was arrested in a mansion in Palm Beach, where he lived as a respected businessman. News of the first arrests reached Newport Beach before noon. Sarah called Dorothy as soon as she found out. "We did it." "It's not over yet," Dorothy warned. "Some may try to flee or seek revenge. Stay alert for a few more days." But Dorothy's concerns proved unfounded. The operation had been so comprehensive that the criminals had no time to react. Within 72 hours, over 50 people were arrested in different countries. The investigative journalist published a series of reports that caused worldwide outrage. The story of the children from the St. Michael ship became a symbol of the fight against international child trafficking. Dorothy was finally able to come out of hiding. She received honors for her courage and was invited to work with international child protection organizations. "You changed the world," she told the group at a celebration gathering at Sarah's house, "not just for yourselves, but for thousands of children who will now be safe." Jason looked around the table, seeing his biological and adoptive siblings gathered with the woman who had saved them all. "We found our family, the true family that fate gave us." "And now?" asked Lily, the youngest, who had followed the entire journey with admiration for her older siblings. "Now we live," Sarah replied, hugging all her children. "We live without fear, knowing who we are and where we come from." Rebecca, who had become an unofficial sister to the family, added, "And we help other families reunite. There are still many children searching for their origins." Rebecca's idea planted a seed that would blossom in the following months. The group decided to create a non-governmental organization to help adopted people find their biological families. "We can turn our experience into something positive for others," suggested Anthony, who had discovered a talent for coordinating complex projects. "And Dorothy can help us, since she has experience with child trafficking cases," added Jessica. The proposal was enthusiastically accepted by everyone. In the months that followed, they established the NGO St. Michael Family in honor of the ship where their lives first intersected. The organization's work quickly gained recognition. Hundreds of people sought help to find lost relatives, and many families were reunited thanks to the group's dedicated work. Jason discovered he was a natural leader, coordinating search operations. Anthony used his practical skills to create an efficient database system. Jessica and Rebecca applied their knowledge of health and education to provide emotional support to families. Derek managed the financial and logistical aspects. Sarah became the maternal figure of the organization, offering comfort and guidance to people who had experienced traumas similar to those of her children. Dorothy, finally free to work openly, brought international contacts and experience in complex family separation cases. 1 year after the criminal organization's downfall, they received a special visit. An elegant woman in her 60s appeared at the NGO's headquarters, asking to speak with Jason. "My name is Helen Thompson," she said nervously. I'm the ex-wife of William Thompson." The name caused immediate tension in the room. William Thompson was in prison, but his presence still caused fear. "I came here to apologize," Helen continued, "and to offer information that might help you find more children." "What kind of information?" asked Jason, cautious. "For years I kept secret records of all of William's operations. He didn't know I was aware of his criminal activities. When I discovered the truth, I started documenting everything." Helen explained she had been married to William for 15 years, always believing he was a legitimate businessman. When she discovered the child trafficking, she was traumatized but too afraid to report him. "Now that he's in prison, I can finally do what's right." The information Helen brought was invaluable. Detailed records of over 1,000 children who had passed through the scheme over 2 decades, including many who were never found. "With this data, we can locate hundreds of families," said Dorothy, examining the documents. "That's what I want," Helen replied. "I want my involuntary part in this story to help unite families, not separate them." Helen joined the Foundation's team, bringing financial resources and connections that allowed them to significantly expand the family reunification work. In the years that followed, the St. Michael family became an international reference in family reunion cases. They helped reunite over 500 families separated by traumatic circumstances. Jason married a social worker he met during the Foundation's work, and they had 2 children who grew up hearing the stories of courage from the entire family. Anthony developed an app that made it easier to search for lost relatives, connecting databases from different countries. Jessica specialized in child psychology, offering treatment for children who had experienced separation trauma. Rebecca created an educational program to prevent child trafficking situations, bringing information to vulnerable communities. Derek expanded the Foundation's work to other countries in Latin America, replicating the successful model. Sarah, now a proud grandmother, continued to be the emotional heart of the organization, welcoming each new family as if they were her own. Dorothy received several international awards for her contribution to child protection and became a UN consultant in child trafficking cases. 5 years after that day when Sarah and her children found the abandoned ship, they organized a big celebration at Newport Beach. Hundreds of people attended, families who had been reunited through the Foundation's work, survivors of other criminal schemes, authorities who supported them. During the party, Jason gave an emotional speech. "We started looking for our own story and discovered our mission was much bigger. We learned that family isn't just those who share our blood, but those who share our heart and our determination to do good." Dorothy taught us that one act of courage can change hundreds of lives. Sarah taught us that true love knows no borders. And all of you taught us that when people come together for a just cause, miracles happen. The audience gave a standing ovation. Children ran along the beach, playing freely under the sun. Reunited families exchanged stories and smiles. The St. Michael ship, which once represented separation and fear, had become a symbol of unity and hope. Mrs. Margaret, now 85 but still vigorous, watched the celebration with tears of joy. "My granddaughter saved 23 children that night. But those 23 children saved thousands of others. Good always multiplies." As the sun set over Newport Beach, Sarah gathered all her children, biological, adopted, and those in heart, for a family photo. There were over 20 people now, a family that had grown not by chance but by the conscious choice to love and protect one another. "Thank you," she whispered, gazing at the sea where it all began. "Thank you for showing us that sometimes we need to lose to find what truly matters." The St. Michael ship remained on the island, now as a memorial. Plaques told the story of Dorothy and the brave children who helped dismantle an international criminal network. Visitors from all over the world came to see the place where an act of heroism changed so many lives. And every first Thursday of the month, the St. Michael family gathered on the island for a picnic, not just to remember the past but to plan the future, because they had learned that true family is the one that faces storms together and always finds a safe harbor in mutual love. Dorothy, now with graying hair but eyes still shining with determination, often said, "You ask me if I regret risking everything that night. The answer is simple. Look around. See all these happy families, all these safe children, all this love that has multiplied. How could I regret something that brought so much good? And when the younger children asked about the ship's story, Jason always ended with the same words. Courage isn't about not being afraid. Courage is doing what's right, even when you are scared. And when brave people come together, they can move mountains or save ships full of dreams. The story of the St. Michael family became a legend in the region. Teachers told it to students, parents to children, fishermen to tourists. A story of how true love can overcome any storm and turn tragedy into triumph. And whenever someone in the area faced family difficulties, they heard the same comforting phrase, "Remember the St. Michael ship." Sometimes we need to get lost at sea to discover what our true beach really is. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story of family reunion and overcoming adversity. Do you believe that the power of family love can truly move mountains, as the St. Michael family demonstrated? Share your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other touching stories about family and hope.